enjoyed Hereditary when it came out. The cinematography was beautiful, and the fact that it married that with some really horrific imagery and even more horrific implications we didn't see in full was great to me. The family drama underpinning it all was compelling and wonderfully acted across the board, with Toni Collette being a standout performer. I would call this my favourite horror family drama, if that genre even existed before. But writer-director Ari Aster would not agree with this assessment. He does not consider it a horror film. Now, far be it from me to assume authorial intent over the person who actually has that, but I would disagree. There's enough horrific elements that it qualifies in my book. But either way, he did follow it with his first true horror film by his account, with 2019's Midsommar, starring Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner, William Jackson Harper, Will Poulter, and Wilhelm Blomgren. I'm probably going to butcher a bunch of Scandinavian names, but I'm going to do my best, so please don't go in the comments going, you said this wrong, you said that wrong. I know, I'm doing my best. But this film is wonderful for a number of reasons, and the video I wanted to do when I first watched it, I can't really do now, because I've said a number of times I don't like to look at other people's opinions or reviews or whatever, to not have it colour my own. But it's been very difficult from the time of originally watching and wanting to do it to getting around to it to avoid everything. I already know that there are people out there who share my thoughts on the fact that it is about emotional support and dependency and availability, I guess. So I can't really delve into that in the way that I would have done without that information. The whole tapestry at the start, and Maya tapestry, and the tube, the sister with the tube in the trees, which is more unsettling in motion, still does not do it justice. I can't really cover all that off as much as I'd like to, because again, it's all out there, and I don't like to rehash what's already out there if I know that it's there. If I'm doing it just because, confluence of ideas, fine. But I know that I've seen things and I don't want it to colour. So this is going to be a bit of a weirder video. There's going to be elements of review and elements of analysis, but the emotional stuff that is really the core of the film, the theme, I guess, I'm going to look at it through the lens of BPD, because I have that. And I think it is a very interesting lens to look at it through, and not everyone can look at it through that lens. But first off, the general, everyone, again, is great in this film. Jack Rayner's very convincing as really an emotionally distant guy who just wants to have fun with his friends. Will Poulter is the most unlikable ever in this film. I'm sure he's lovely in real life, but he is so unlikable in this film as Mark, and it's wonderful. William Jackson Harper, I'd actually watched this first, the first time around, then watched All of the Good Place, and then watched this again. So he was Chidi in my mind this second time around, which is very weird. I felt sorry for Josh/Chidi, basically. And Florence Pugh, of course, blows it away. She acts very well, and I'll get into more of that when I talk about the emotional side of things, the themes. But it's beautifully shot again, again with some horrific moments, intercut, sort of smashed faces and stuff. Horrible, but wonderfully shot, like I say. The flip was possibly a bit heavy-handed as they're going into Helsingland. It's like, oh, we're going into another world, like an Alice Through the Looking Glass kind of scenario. A little heavy-handed, but I get it. The trips, I don't know how much I can say on YouTube without being sort of flagged, but the trips that they take, you know what I'm talking about, were wonderfully done as well. I mean, it's a simple distortion effect, but it's subtle. It's not overdone, and the growing through the hands and stuff like that, which again is a wonderful theme that's picked up. There's a lot of thematic continuity in this film, and I love it for that. The fact that, the first trip she has, when she's first getting to know them, the grass is growing through her hands. Then later on, as she's sort of doing the dance competition, it's back again. She once again is growing into this community. She's becoming part of it. And I love those threads that were picked up. There's a lot of symbolism in this, like I say, that I can't really go into as much detail because it's all out there. But one that I noticed was quite interesting, actually. The 9 situation. Now, in a lot of pagan cultures, 3 is a very symbolic number. And obviously 3 times 3 is 9. Midsommar has 9 letters. They sacrifice 9 people. And the cycles that they use are 9 based, but it's 18 based technically, but because 18 is 2 times 9, it kind of works. You've got the 18, 36, etc. But interestingly, even the 90 is part of that. The fact that this festival takes place every 90 years, and he talks about the seasons. Now, does this imply there's a 5th season between 72 and 90, or what? What happens with this? It's never explained. Is there a 5th one, or is it something different? But I love the fact that it does this. It leans into that numerology side quite well. But the emotional side is really the core of the film, and I'm probably going to dedicate the rest of it to that, aside from a couple of little deviations towards the end. But we see right at the start, Danny, she has a sister with bipolar, apparently, and she's on her own medication, she's got whatever, it's never explicitly mentioned, but there's clearly a family history of mental illness. The fact that her sister, ends up basically kind of doing her own out of stupor, but we'll come back to that later, in a way frees Danny for the rest of the film, for what happens. But when she finds out about this, when she's told, and she just needs someone to hold her and support her, Christian is so unavailable. If you look, he's just loosely wrapping his arms over her. There's no actual holding, there's no sharing her anguish like we see with the Hurgers. It is just literally lip service, basically. He's doing the bare minimum. And okay, talking with his friends and stuff, particularly Mark, again, is trying to get him away from the relationship. They think that she's basically emotionally abusing him. And this is, again, where my BPD analysis can come in, because a lot of people think that those with BPD are emotionally manipulative and abusive. And, okay, we can be, but we're not doing it consciously. We're not doing it to get anything other than just what we've craved all our lives. With BPD, it is a case of emotional invalidation. You may have been told growing up that, oh, stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about, or what have you got to be angry about, or whatever. It's often the sort of more negative emotions that are slapped down. So you learn to basically fake happy all the time. But then you bottle the anger, the sadness, whatever. And it can sometimes blow up in very bad ways, as has happened with me in the past, or something else. Basically, it doesn't help, though, to bottle emotions. It's very unhealthy. But it's something that we learn to do with this illness. And I would say perhaps Danny is a high candidate for that. I think it's very possible she does have it because of having this feeling that her emotions are invalid all the time. The fact that she's always like, oh, I shouldn't put upon people as well. That's a big thing. You get used to kind of feeling like you're not important. What you say, what you feel, what you do doesn't matter. You're there just to make other people feel better. And like I say, at the start of the film, right through really until she's fully accepted into the Hurgers, she is that. She doesn't feel like her emotions are valid. Even the time that they're taking the first trip, she's like, oh no, I probably shouldn't, because she knows in herself she's not comfortable, she's not in a good place. If she does something now, she will react badly. But she's pressured into it by everyone else because she's like, okay, I'm not going to ruin everyone else's happiness. So who is really the emotionally abusive ones here? I don't think it's Danny. She's the one who's acquiescing. But she does make the cardinal sin of looking in a mirror when you're on a trip. That's rule 1. I've never done them, but even I know that. You don't do that because that way leads to madness. But then, of course, like I say, we get this whole plot with the Hurgers and, again, how Christian is just an awful person because he completely unethically shanghais Josh's thesis idea. And they do, come at odds because of it. But it just shows, like, he just is trying to take the easy road. That's what Christian's all about. It's the easy road. Mark is so disrespectful, obviously urinating on the tree and everything like that. And, but Danny's doing her best. She's curious. And I think this is what Pella saw, as well as, possibly being good breeding stock for the future, perhaps. Because they do say later on, they bring outsiders in for genetic diversity. Although they do promote inbreeding to create oracles like Reuben, which is very unsettling, but Danny's just willing to be incorporated, and so she is. We have that final sort of dance competition where she's giving the tea, which looks suspiciously like the spring water given to Christian, which I will say, Ulla actually says, this is basically to make you more pliant. I'm giving it to you so you'll do what we want you to do. I love the fact that towards the end of the film they are so just, I don't care, I'm going to say exactly what's going on. But like we see, Danny gets incorporated, she sees Christian impregnating Maya, and we get a brilliant moment of the film that the first time I watched it, I'm not going to lie, I was chuckling a little, I did find it weird and ridiculous. But the second time around, it clicked. Because not only are they sharing the anguish, obviously all moaning and crying with her, but before they start to do that, they're breathing slower. Because she's hyperventilating, she's really having a bad moment. She's kind of having a panic attack of sorts. But they breathe slower. And once her breathing slowed, then they share the anguish. So they're nurturing her first. They're like, okay, breathe, because don't pass out. Get to a place where you're sort of calmer, and then we will share in this. We will get it out and we will deal with it. And like I say, this is why the film is really about emotional support. At the start of the film, it could be argued that she's emotionally dependent because she doesn't know anything better. She's learned to be that way. She doesn't understand what healthy emotional support is. But through spending time with the Hurga people, she learns that just by doing, just by experience. The last shot of the film, and again, credit to Florence Pugh for this, Danny smiles. And we've seen her smile and, sort of joke a bit throughout the film in various pieces. But that last shot, she's smiling properly. It's in her eyes, it's everything. Everything else was clearly fake. It's just, I feel like I should laugh. But right towards the end, she's finally free. She's experiencing a full range of emotions. She's fully human because now she has a family that supports her. And that's what this is. Ari Aster said that Hereditary was a family drama. This is also a family drama. It's a different kind of family drama, but it's a family drama. It's the drama of finding a family that will support you. Because people always say you can't choose your family. You can't choose your blood family, but you can choose your non-blood family, the people around you who you know will have your back no matter what. You might call them besties and things like that, but they are a kind of secondary family. And that's what Danny needed. She wasn't getting it through Christian or anything like that. And that's what this film's all about. It is about that emotional support. I mean, we see it a little earlier as well, when Christian has supposedly actually really forgotten about her birthday and is kind of reminded about it by Pele. We see the people sort of in the background of that scene with a baby, and they're all rocking together. It shows early on. We've got these signs that everyone pulls together. It's all nurturing and it's all support. It's all about the common good. But I want to end with something that I really don't want to talk about ever in a way, but the Atastupa scene in particular, but also some information I found out about that because I thought it was quite interesting. But that scene was very horrible for me. I mean, the first time I was like, I thought about it for days, I was traumatised. This time I could prepare for it, I knew it was coming, and I'd seen stills of the dummy and things like that as well, so I was kind of a bit more okay with it. It still wasn't great, it was very uncomfortable. I did find it interesting that the Americans were reacting less severely than the Brits, kind of reversing that idea quite well. Again, nice little subtle thing there. But it really unsettled me, and my brain did that thing where it's like, what is it? Is it real? And in fact, the idea of ritual genocide, which is what it is, killing old people at a certain point, is something that has been looked at and analysed and believed for a while, as part of various pagan cultures, Swedish included. However, Adolf Noreen, I believe, a Swedish linguist in around the 19th century, started querying this. And over time, researchers have kind of concurred that it wasn't actually a thing that happened. That made me feel a bit better about the scene. It's not a real thing that ever happened, as far as we can tell. The consensus, like I say, is that it's just made up. And that made me feel better about that scene, because it It literally stayed with me for days afterwards. But this film, like I say, is great. It's, again, got that wonderful marriage of some great shots and some horrific imagery and horrific implications and some great performances and a really good, like I say, family drama underneath it all. It's basically Hereditary 2 in many ways, and that's not anything against it. That's a positive. I'm saying it's a spiritual successor, I suppose. It follows the threads and does it in its own way, but still wonderfully. And I enjoyed it as much as Hereditary. So if you haven't seen it, again, I keep saying this, why are you watching a video spoiling everything? But, maybe give it a rewatch, maybe look at it again through the lens of, like I said, with BPD now, with that understanding, see if you can diagnose Danny too, why not? But I'll be back next time with something different, because how could I get some things so similar to this? But I do think that it did remind me of The Wicker Man in many ways, like a Swedish Wicker Man. So if people do want me to cover those, and I mean the original and the Nicolas Cage version, because the Nicolas Cage version is hilarious, and the original is just as disturbing and interesting as this, but a different kind of way of disturbing. So I'll be happy to cover those down the line, but obviously we're not going to do that next week. So yeah, next time something entirely different. Hope you'll join me for it, but until then, as always, thank you for watching and take care.